Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the short Torah Thought of the week. And this week is Parshat Bamidbar. It is the first parsha of the fourth of the 5 books of Moses. Bamidbar means in the desert. It's also known as Numbers because in this week's Torah portion we read about the census that was taken, counting the Jewish people, and we find that several times in the book of the Numbers in Bamidbar. So I want to draw a comparison and lesson from two elements of the parsha. First of all, the name of the parsha, the name of the portion of this week which is Bamidbar, which means in the desert, and the counting. And interestingly enough, that this is always the Parshas Bamidbar, the Torah reading of this week is always done before the holiday of Shavuot. The holiday of Shavuot is the third of, I say third, it's not necessarily the third, it's actually the second of the 3 pilgrimage holidays. It's third only in the sense that it may be a little bit less known. We know about Passover, we know about Sukkot when we sit in the Sukkah. Maybe a little bit less known is Shavuot, but it shouldn't be because it's just as much a biblical holiday as the other two. And that is, in a sense, actually the most important one, because that is when we celebrate the giving of the 10 Commandments, the giving of the Torah. So this week's Torah portion, Bamidbar, is always read before Shavuot, when we celebrate the giving of the Torah. So there must be a connection between Bamidbar, which means that it's in the desert, the counting, the numbers, and the giving of the Torah. So let's try to explore this in the couple of minutes that we have. Numbers, or counting, highlights the fact that it highlights the common value of every single individual that's counting. The greatest scholar, or the one who is most talented, is counted as one, and the simplest, and perhaps even what we would call in Hebrew a rasha, someone who is a wicked, bad Jew, for lack of better translation of the word rasha, so is also counted as one. So when God counted the Jewish people, he counted Moses as one, and he counted the simplest individual as one. Why is that? Because this highlights, as I just mentioned, the common denominator of every single individual, which is the innate godly spark that each one of us has, and our connection to Torah. Our sages tell us that if one individual was missing from that count, God would not have given the Torah to the Jewish people. Which tells us that the Torah is given not to the talents that we have, but to our essential character, our essential bond that we have to the Torah. And that's why the Jewish people were counted first, to highlight the value of every individual and the common value, the common denominator, the common quality that every individual has, that soul connection, which is why everybody is counted as one, and everybody receives the Torah. And this is also highlighted, and this is an important point, with the fact that that we always read Bamidbar. We always read this Parshat Bamidbar, which means in the desert, before the Torah was given. This highlights the fact as well, this above mentioned fact, in the following manner. Bamidbar means in the desert, and the questions are asked: why was the Torah given in a desert? Why wasn't the Torah given in a city, once the Jews got to Israel, to Jerusalem, and so on? And the explanation that is given is that various explanations, but one of the explanations given is to highlight the fact that a desert is basically no man's land. It belongs to everybody. And it is to teach us that the Torah belongs to all of us. Often I hear, as a rabbi or so on, someone might say to me, "Rabbi, you're a rabbi, you're a scholar, or you grew up in a religious family in an observant home, yeah, the Torah is for you. But I didn't have that background. I don't have the background of being raised in an observant home. So I don't really feel that the Torah is for me. Comes God and gives the Torah in the desert, which represents no man's land. Nobody owns it. Nobody has more right to the Torah than the other. Every single individual Jew has an innate connection. That's why he's counted as one before the Torah is given, no different than Moses. The Torah is yours, no different than Moses, no different than the rabbi, no different than the yeshiva, the yeshiva teacher, etc., etc. The Torah is equally ours. The values of the Torah are equally ours. Our connection to Torah is equal. It reminds me of a story that I heard of Mr. Abe Foxman of the ADL, who has fought for Jewish causes, Jewish anti-Semitism for most years of his for many, many years. And he related, at least I heard this from a second hand, not from him directly, but I heard from someone that he related the following. He was actually born in the USSR. He was born in a city, I think the name of the city was Banavochi. He was born in 1940. As a result of World War II and the Germans about to invade, so his father made the gut-wrenching decision to have him be taken and adopted by his non-Jewish maid. And this way, hoping that that's how his life will be saved, even if he, God forbid, the father, whose name was Yosef, does not survive the war. His maid went ahead. His maid was a devout Catholic. She converted him to be a Catholic. He was at the time, I think, 4 years old, and she loved him. She took good care of him. And after the war, his father, Yosef, who survived the war, came and searched up where his son might be. He came back and he came to the maid and asked for his son back, and she refused to give the child back to his father. They came before the court, before the judge, and the judge ruled that it's up to the child. As much as the father tried to argue that he's a child, what would he know? That was the judge's ruling. At one point, when Abe was in his father's custody, before the decision was made, it was Simchas Torah, and they went into a shul. This, at the time, I believe it was in Germany, actually, but I'm not sure. Regardless, they went into a shul. It was Simchas Torah, and to little Abe, this was all totally strange. He had very little memory of any of his Jewish upbringing, and not only that, he was taught by his maid to actually be quite resentful to any Jews and so on. He comes into the shul with his dad, and it's Simchas Torah. It's right after the war, and the mood was not great. And at one point, when the dancing started, this big Russian Jewish soldier comes over to Abe and says, "Could I pick you up on my shoulders and dance with you like a Sefer Torah?" He turns to his father. His father gives the permission, and he picks him up, and he starts dancing with him with great joy. And he says to his father, after the war, you basically don't see any Jewish kids around. You only see some of the older people, or not older, but at least not young kids. And for me to see a Jewish child is like I'm so excited. It's like I have a Sefer Torah over here, and that's why he danced with him with such great excitement. And after that incident, Mr. Foxman said he saw the joy that he experienced over here in this Simchas Torah experience, that made him decide that he chose to stay with his dad. So this story reminds us the connection of a Jewish individual, even someone who didn't have at the time much of an upbringing and connection, at least the way I understood this story. But there's an innate connection. And that's why we're counted. We're counted to bring out this innate, beautiful connection that we have, that of the Sefer Torah, that we are a living Sefer Torah. Every single one of us. So we should cherish that. We should appreciate that and internalize it by making a point, as we're coming up to the holiday of Shavuot, to spend at least 5-10 minutes a day. There's so much material now available on the internet, coralsprings.org, and so many other places, to appreciate and to study the tremendous oitzer, the tremendous treasure that we have, the Torah, which has kept us throughout history, despite what we have gone through. And it has so much, once we internalize it, then we could share it with the world in making the world so much more of a meaningful and better place. So let us do so. It's a good resolution, even 5 minutes a day to do so, in preparation for receiving the Torah and the holiday of Shavuot. And that's the message of this week's Parsha. Thank you for listening. Please share words of Torah with others. Everybody should have a fantastic day and much success in your preparation for this monumental day of Shavuot, when we will receive the Torah.